Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the dceu Daily. Articles to read, updates to give you. So let's get on with the show. The Batman has a unique take on the superhero genre, says Paul Dano, and so say all of us who have seen it. Exclusive: Paul Dano, who plays the Riddler in the Batman, credits director Matt Reeves for bringing something new to the superhero movie by Saul Ahmed of Screen Rant. Paul Dano, who plays the Riddler in the highly anticipated The Batman, says that the film differentiates itself from other superhero projects directed by American filmmaker Matt Reeves. The Batman will once again see part of Bruce Wayne Batman recast, with Robert Pattinson stepping in to replace Ben Affleck. He's not replacing Affleck, we keep on saying that, for the lead role following the latter's DC Extended Universe appearances. Dano and Pattinson are joined by an ensemble cast that includes the likes of Andy Serkis, Alfred Pennyworth, Joey Kravitz as Selina Kyle Catwoman, Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon, and Colin Farrell as the Penguin, or if you've seen the movie, Oz. The story of the Batman revolves around the titular superhero in his second year of fighting crime as he ventures into Gotham City's underworld and uncovers corruption at the same time. Bruce has to hunt down the Riddler, a sadistic killer targeting Gotham's elite, who leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues in the process. Due to the ongoing pandemic, the film, originally slated to release in 2021, was delayed twice, but is finally set to land in theatres on March the 4th. Ultimately, we're getting it in March because Matt Reeves made it clear he didn't want to be doing any HBO Max day and date, and I agree with him on that. Very important that we're getting it exclusively in movie theatres. In a recent exclusive interview with Screen Rant, Dano says the Batman manages to capture a unique take for a film in the superhero genre. According to the actor, Reeves brought a strong sense of perspective to the material that led to something he had never seen in projects of its kind. Dano also reinforces the importance of charting your own path while trying to dig into the history, iconography that made Batman's story as iconic as it is. Check out his quote below. You want to dig into the history and the iconography and the archetypes and all the energy that's there while charting our own path, which was most important for this film. And luckily Matt and his script brought a true point of view and something that I haven't seen before in not only a Batman film but in a superhero film. So scary, yes, but exciting. Scary and exciting sums up this movie. Films exploring the Caped Crusader have always tried to break new ground in the genre, and there have been multiple attempts to kickstart a franchise since 1966 Adam West-led Batman, albeit with mixed results. 1997's Batman and Robin, which saw George Clooney take on the mantle of Gotham's Defender, is often seen as the lowest point in the history of live-action iterations of the character. It's interesting, you know, because I did find Batman and Robin quite entertaining. But I remember when they were marketing Batman Begins, one of my favourite Batman films of all time, I felt tired with Batman movies. I think because of Batman and Robin being out in 1997 and 2005 from 1997 is a long time, but I still wasn't really interested, even though I love DC and I love Batman. But I remember the premiere night seeing all the clips and I thought, fuck me, this is different. I'm going to watch this movie, and I fell in love with it because it's Bruce Wayne's emotional journey, very similar to the Batman, just done in a very different, hardcore, as Paul Dano says, horrific, frightening way. With 1995's Val Kilmer starring Batman Forever also occasionally thrown into the mix, however, Tim Burton's distinct take on the DC hero in 1989's Batman and Christopher Nolan's more grounded approach to the Dark Knight trilogy have shown that it's very much possible to retell the story in inventive ways. I would say the same thing about Superman. Look at Superman the movie, look at Lois and Clark, the new adventures of Superman, look at Smallville, you know, look at the Snyderverse, and now look at Superman and Lois, which is a fantastic way to reinvent the character. So it's just great when you have an imagination. I won't be hearing from anyone that Superman isn't relatable and it's difficult to write Superman stories. If you've got an imagination, you could do anything. With critically acclaimed films like 2008's Cloverfield and the recent Planet of the Apes sequels, Reeves has more than proved his mettle as a director. Dano's comments are backed by Reeves' impressive filmography, and the early promotional material, including trailers and some of Michael Giacchino's outstanding soundtrack. If the Batman turns out as unique as the actor hypes it up as to be, fans of the famed superhero and general moviegoers alike are in for a memorable cinematic experience when the film premieres next week. This is a film that will genuinely shock you, delight you, scare you, and excite you. That's what type of film this is. I'm not a spoiler guy. I don't start launching spoilers. Even if you ask me, I won't tell you anything. The point is, you have never seen a film like this in the superhero genre before. Paul Dano is absolutely spot on. You are going to be shocked, twist after twist, horrific sequence after horrific sequence, and what's really going on in this film is going to shock you to your very core. Jeffrey Wright's been talking about Batman, so we'll be reading 2 or 3 articles because he's been talking about this film in the deep sense of the word, and we really want to get into what people who have made this film and that were involved in this film have to say about this film. The Batman franchise should create new villains, says Jeffrey Wright. Now that's interesting. I think that will be pretty awesome. Jeffrey Wright, who is the next actor to play Commissioner James Gordon, talks about how the Batman franchise should invent new villains, by Andy, whose surname I can never pronounce, of Screen Rant. The Batman star Jeffrey Wright thinks the new franchise should create its own villains outside the comics. The latest cinematic tale of The Dark Knight is finally coming to theatres next month, as Matt Reeves' highly anticipated reboot, it's not a reboot, will feature Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne. While the Batman will skip the origin story, Pattinson's iteration will still be relatively new in the role, with the story focusing on Bruce's second year as a crime fighter. With the start of a new Batverse comes fresh iterations of the various characters from Bruce's mythology. The Batman will primarily focus on Bruce's battle against Edward Nashton, aka the Riddler, played by Paul Dano. While Riddler is serving as the main antagonist, he's beyond an antagonist by the way, the Batman is wasting no time in bringing more villains from panel to screen. Colin Farrell is set to play the latest cinematic version of Oswald Cobblepot exactly 30 years after Danny DeVito's portrayal of the Penguin in Batman Returns. By the way, Danny DeVito's portrayal as Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, is sensational. So is Colin Farrell's. Even though Farrell won't have as big of a role as Dano's Riddler, HBO Max is currently developing a Penguin spin-off series. The Batman will also feature Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro, appearing as a territory villain. If Warner Brothers greenlights sequels, there are a ton of iconic Batman foes to pick and choose from the comics. As many popular villains as Batman has, one of the stars from the reboot, it's not a reboot, it's set in its own world, it's not replacing what we've seen in the DCEU, they're insisting it's a reboot though, but it's not, has some personal wishes in where the franchise goes in regards to foes. During Screen Rant's exclusive interview with Wright, the actor spoke about how he would love to see the Batman universe invent its own set of antagonists, using the Batman prequel show Gotham as an example. Lots of people respect that show, as do I. Prequel show Gotham as an example. Wright believes it will be refreshing to see Pattinson's Batman face enemies that haven't appeared in the comics, sharing the following. Who would I love to see? You know, in the TV series they had the Rogues Gallery that we know, but they also created some of their own villains. I think King Tut was newly created, and I don't see any reason why we should stop now. It's great to revisit the familiar, but I think it's also an exciting opportunity because the franchise continues to grow, continues to evolve, actually come up with something new. Now, I don't mind this as long as they're not replacing the former, rogues gallery, that's fine. If Matt wants to create his own villains as well for his universe, why not? Because we know he's capable of doing that. Something that the Batman has already gained a lot of recognition for is a new take on popular villains like the Riddler. Dano's iteration is being reimagined as a Zodiac-inspired serial killer, which hasn't really been part of the overall DC mythology. Seeing the Batman franchise invent their own unique antagonists would certainly be refreshing, as previous Batman films haven't done that. Whether they serve as primary or secondary antagonists, there is definitely room to explore villains with no established canon. It's worth noting that there are still many iconic Batman villains that have yet to appear on the big screen, which Reeves' new universe should take advantage of in sequels. Someone like the Joker could and should take a back seat, as he has been featured more than any other Bat villain in previous DC projects. That's not going to happen, because the Joker puts butts in seats and people love him. So just because he's been in a lot of live action material doesn't mean you rest him. If something works, it works. That's why we're getting a Joker movie sequel. And I don't want to talk about the Joker in the Reeves universe. Watch the bloody film. Pattinson has even talked about wanting to see something like the Court of Owls in the Batman 2, which would be the group's second live action depiction following Gotham, depending on the Batman's commercial and critical success. We know where that's going. Gotham depending on the Batman's commercial and critical success, but there will hopefully be opportunities to include established and original villains in the new franchise. So yeah, I have no issue with Matt or any other creative bringing in original villains for Batman to go up against, to fight. But you know what? They created some amazing villains, an amazing rogues gallery, and you don't bring in new ones and replace the iconic with the new. You can marry them both together, and that's okay for the right reasons, using your imagination. But no, we want to see characters like the Joker. I want to see characters from the Rogues Gallery we haven't seen yet. And that's okay, as long as it's all done with fair-mindedness. We're still sticking with the Batman. After all, it's the next DC live-action project, and wow, isn't it a great time to be a fucking DC fan? The Batman star calls playing iconic DC characters an exciting challenge. Exclusive, the Batman star Jeffrey Wright considers the significance of playing an iconic DC character and calls the overall experience thrilling. By Rachel Abernathy of Screen Rant. The Batman star Jeffrey Wright reflects on playing an iconic DC character and describes it as an exciting challenge for the umpteenth time. DC's most beloved hero is getting another screen adaptation. But this time around, Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, promises to be vastly different from any previous iteration. Robert Pattinson steps into the role of Bruce for the Batman, which finds him in the second year of being Gotham's complicated knight. Matt Reeves serves as director, and by all accounts he seems to have crafted a unique and gritty take on the Batman mythology. It's beyond gritty, by the way. Calling it gritty isn't even fair. The Batman finds Bruce contending with a string of murders among Gotham's elite. A masked Riddler, Paul Dano, is the one behind it, and it will take all of Bruce's considerable skill as a detective to unravel the puzzle the Riddler has laid for him. Beyond those two, the Batman features a surprisingly large number of iconic DC characters, from Catwoman Zoe Kravitz to a pre-Penguin Oswald Cobblepot. Colin Farrell. Andy Serkis meanwhile plays Alfred Pennyworth, while Wright assumes the role of a Jim Gordon before he's made commissioner of the Gotham PD. And of course, Jim Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy, Christopher Nolan's one, also we met him before he became the commissioner. So I think he's not the commissioner in the Dark Knight either, is he? But they're doing this Jim Gordon in a very different way. I found it kind of interesting what direction Matt went with his Jim Gordon. Screen Rant recently got the chance to sit down with the stars of the Batman for an interesting conversation. While speaking to both Dano and Wright, the latter actor reflected on what comes with playing popular DC characters. Though some might write it off as just playing a silly comic book figure, Wright understood the significance that comes from assuming the role of someone like Jim Gordon, he said. It's not trivial stuff. That comes with its responsibilities. Like Paul, I don't know if it's scary or if it's thrilling. I think it's thrilling and it's exciting, an exciting challenge to take on. Particularly in the cases of those like Gordon and the Riddler, fans have seen their fair share of on-screen depictions for each, and they likely have some extra comic book knowledge on the side as well. Therefore, they have strong opinions about how they should be portrayed. Those are characters who have stood the test of time and crossed several mediums, meaning all of them have a storied history that the Batman now gets to add to. As Wright said, that brings a responsibility and also a challenge, with the challenge aspect that likely has to do with needing to find a new approach to a well-known character which can't always be easy. Luckily, it so far looks like the Batman has managed to do just that for all of its DC players. Bruce has the biggest focus by far in the film, but fans will also be treated to unique takes on those like Gordon, the Riddler and Catwoman. The Batman is poised to be an eponymous character's biggest movie yet, and the early buzz is favourable, though the full reactions won't arrive until next week. Yeah, can't wait for that. It could be that Reeves has pulled off something truly special and new with some well-trodden characters, and that's quite an achievement, yeah. Isn't it funny? I was just thinking about this as I was reading the article. Do you remember when it was announced that a lot of members of this rogue gallery would be part of the Batman, and everyone started, Batman Returns, it was overcrowded. Batman Returns wasn't overcrowded. Burton did a great job with putting those characters in, but it's not overcrowded. It's done in such a kind of godfathery way, and I love it. And I love it that Wright is excited to be playing Jim Gordon, because he's actually a very important character within the DC universe. The Batman star Jeffrey Wright talks about the Batman and why comic book characters are so popular today. I mean, I could sit here with you for hours explaining you the reason for this. Everyone has different reasons. Let's give this a read. By Matthew Biggin of Screen Rant. The Batman actor Jeffrey Wright has given his opinion on the enduring popularity of comic book characters and why they are more appealing than ever. The Batman star Jeffrey Wright explains why comic book characters are so popular. In a recent interview, Wright has established himself as one of the leading character actors in the film industry, and with a stellar career so far, the 56-year-old will make his first foray into the world of comic book movies with the release of The Batman. The Matt Reeves directed movie features an ensemble cast headed up by British actor and heartthrob Robert Pattinson, best known for his role as Edward Cullen in the Twilight franchise. Wright will portray Police Detective Commissioner James Gordon in the upcoming superhero film, becoming the first African American to play the role in a live action project. It's always great to inject some representation into these things, but let's not forget Jeffrey Wright is a very good actor, and that's why he has the job, because he's a really good actor. Whatever colour he is, whatever background he is, whether he's part of a minority or not, really doesn't matter. I don't care what colour this man is, he's a great actor, and that's all that matters to me. Set during the Caped Crusader's second year of fighting crime in Gotham City, the Batman explores the struggles Bruce Wayne faces as he loses his grip on Gotham after a serial killer named the Riddler shows up, targeting the city's elite. Anticipation for the movie has been high and shows the appetite for comic book movies and stories involving comic book characters is stronger than ever, and this is particularly noticeable in the wide range of different types of comic book films released in recent years. Perhaps inspired by Academy Award-winning DC movie Joker, the Batman takes a dark and gritty tone and operates as a character study as much as an action movie. This showcases some of the elements that have continued to make comic book characters so popular and iconic in movies. It's interesting, the WB kind of films like the Joker, doing character studies on these iconic DC characters, where Marvel is kind of just making a bit of fun entertainment. It's different, but I do like the fact that we've got films like the Joker and the Batman in our armoury over at DC. Indeed, speaking during an exclusive interview with Screen Rant, Wright weighed in on what he feels makes comic book characters so popular today. and why audiences keep revisiting their stories. The Casino Royale actor spoke about the role these characters play in people's lives and how they give them something to believe in and something they can trust over a long and established legacy. Reed writes full comments on the matter below. There's such a personal relationship that people have with this franchise and these comics and these characters. You want to do justice to the characters, but also to that passion. So that's there. There's no question about it. But I understand why that is. This 80-year history of this franchise has allowed, ultimately now, I can speak to now. It allows people to trust these characters. They know them. They can place their faith in them. And particularly at a time when you can't place your faith in everything. Maybe some people have difficulty placing their faith in anything. They know where they can find themselves within these stories. I think they're really deeply important for that reason. I think because of that, people are able to find hope within them. It's not trivial stuff. That comes with its responsibilities. So Wright's saying the right things. And you know, we all love what we love for different reasons. I grew up watching Knight Rider. I just loved Knight Rider. The idea of this, guy driving this car that was a revolutionary car, going out doing cool stuff and befriending this computer while fighting crime. It was pure, unadulterated escapism. Something like Doctor Who I adore. Pure escapism, that idea of travelling in a space-time ship and being able to go wherever you want. That these DC characters are iconic and special. Batman is an ordinary man who happens to be wealthy and uses his wealth for the right reasons to try and save his city. It's absolutely fantastic. Since the turn of the millennium, comic book movies have been on the rise, and their popularity shows no signs of waning anytime soon. This is clear from the number of entries in the MCU and the DCEU that have been released so far, not to mention the number of reboots and reimaginings that have made their way onto screens. Indeed, the Batman marks a reboot. It's not a reboot of sorts of the character just 10 years after the release of The Dark Knight Rises, and could even expand to a new Batman trilogy with Pattinson at the heart. It's not a reboot, and it's going to be more than a trilogy. Before I carry on reading, I want to say something. We have a multiverse strategy. That means every live action Batman you've ever seen is right now in his own Earth saving the day. And Ben Affleck's Batman's out there. I don't know what's going to happen to him after The Flash, but right now he's out there. He hasn't been rebooted. He hasn't been replaced. Fact. Looking at the success and longevity of Marvel and DC movies, it is clear that there is some weight to Wright's comments and that comic book characters often play an important role in people's lives. One of the key things that they provide for moviegoers is that comforting familiarity on screen when they are going to watch a film. Audiences know for the most part what they are getting. When they go to watch a Batman movie, and this can enhance the viewing experience, they're not going to know what they're going to be getting when they see the Batman. And whilst comic book movies continue to be successful, their characters will continue to be popular and iconic. The Batman has been tipped to be a success, and this could bode well for the future of the Batman franchise, as well as the continued success of comic book characters on screen. In reality, I know we've had a surge in live action, comic book stuff, right, and, adaptions, but really they've always been popular on the screen since Superman the movie. Slowly but surely, we've been getting more and more. They'll always be there. Maybe they won't always be as big a trend as they are today, but they're still going to be there, and that's a good thing. This is not like the Western. Steven Spielberg said it's like the Western, they won't be a fad. Yeah, I think the popularity of these movies has hurt cinema to a certain extent, because the more Hollywood sees their popularity, the more of them we get, and the less variety we get in our cinema and our television and streaming shows. So that's a negative. But I love superheroes. I love live action superhero movies and TV shows. So long may it all continue. Before we continue today's DCEU Daily, I really want to congratulate Zack Snyder for getting a Critic Choice Award for Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's absolutely deserved, and I'm very disappointed that it hasn't been able to go forward as one of the choices for the fans, choice movie awards at this year's Oscars. I think that's unfair and I think that's wrong. But congratulations to Zack Snyder. He absolutely deserves it. John Cena has hilarious response to Peacemaker Season 2 question. John Cena has a hilarious response to the question of what will happen in Peacemaker Season 2, which he pins on writer and director James Gunn by Paul Shuri of Screen Rant. John Cena has a hilarious response when asked what will happen in Peacemaker Season 2. Peacemaker Season 1 just wrapped on HBO Max, bringing in a tremendous amount of views, having the biggest single-day performance for an HBO Max original series ever. The streamer announced a renewal for the show just a day before the finale, with writer-director James Gunn expected to take on an even bigger role by writing and directing each episode of Peacemaker Season 2. Peacemaker first appeared in Gunn's The Suicide Squad feature film, released in theatres and on HBO Max in 2021. Initially, Peacemaker was killed off in the movie, but Gunn later wrote a Peacemaker series while on lockdown during the pandemic and presented it to HBO. When asked if he had any spin-off ideas, Cena, who began his career in the WWE, has been building more and more momentum as an actor, especially in the last year. The Suicide Squad Peacemaker series and F9 The Fast Saga, the actor has several upcoming projects in the works, including Matthew Vaughn's spy film Argyle with Henry Cavill. Wow, he's actually going to be in Argyle with another DC actor. Isn't that exciting? And an adaptation of Robert Ludlum's The Jason directed. I think that Cena is more talented as an actor than people give him credit for. You see, these WWE and WWF fighters are actually actors. They're trained actors. It's bullshit. They're pretending when they're wrestling as well. I know some people won't thank me for saying that. So people kind of look down on them when they get acting careers, but they're already actors as wrestlers. So there. Talking with Yahoo, Cena did a post-finale interview where he was asked about what to expect in Peacemaker Season 2. To which the actor hilariously replied, saying he had nothing to do with any of the choices that will become the next season. Cena relents back to Gunn, who is the chief architect of Peacemaker, calling him the madman behind the madness of the show. Ultimately, Cena says he isn't responsible for any of the choices that build the show, including the Easter eggs and guest appearances set up in the finale. Here's Cena's complete response to what's in store for Peacemaker Season 2. I've done a few of these interviews after the finale, and every one of them wants to speculate about what the hell is going to happen in Season 2. And that makes great conversation because there's excitement over the next season. But holy shit, I'm not responsible for any of these choices. I don't write the thing. You've got to talk to the madman named James Gunn for that. I think he's very clever in everything he does, and he doesn't waste a sentence. So in my perspective, those might indeed be safe dots to connect. But you never know. We may never see that. I don't control any of that stuff, and we can talk ourselves in circles about what's going to happen on Season 2, but it's really up to just one guy. So very honest, Cena doesn't take bullshit. Just it's like, look, no point asking me. Even if I had a clue, I couldn't tell you, and it's not up to me, it's up to James Gunn. Quite right too. Gunn didn't initially plan to create a Peacemaker series, but recently said that it was a moment on the Suicide Squad that inspired his desire to explore the character, which was when Peacemaker was about to kill Ratcatcher 2. And there is an article about that, I'm going to read it very shortly, and was reluctant to do so. The exploration continued throughout the Peacemaker show, which made Cena's portrayal more than a crass comedic character, but one with emotional depth and traumatic issues to explore. Gunn is working on another DC-themed show for HBO Max on top of Peacemaker Season 2, although he says the other show will be quite different in theme and execution, and that's why I think it's about Peter Capaldi's The Thinker. It makes sense. Finding out the plans for a new season from the creators and stars of the show in interviews will always be a focus, but Cena seems to know how to steer that ship well. Peacemaker Season 2 is a good ways off, and even though fans will speculate where it's headed, Gunn still has yet to put pen to paper on where that goes. While ideas may have already been discussed or floated, it's unlikely that it's set in stone, so Cena putting it all on Gunn's shoulders is the safest way to avoid letting something slip that may or may not come to fruition. One, this is for sure, though, and that's the Peacemaker Season 2 is already at the front of the hype train, given the tremendous showing for Season 1, and fan speculation will surely continue to spread until the show returns. Yeah, we've got a while to wait. He's working on Guardians 3. We're going to get that out of the way, and then we're going to focus on his huge future with DC live action. I don't know what he's going to do in Peacemaker Season 2. We can have a few guesses and stuff, but nobody knows but James Gunn. James Gunn explains the Suicide Squad moment that spawned Peacemaker's show. Director James Gunn talks about the exact moment in 2021's The Suicide Squad that gave life to John Cena's Peacemaker spin-off series on HBO Max by Andy, whose surname I can't pronounce, from Screen Rant. James Gunn recalls the exact moment when he had the idea for a Peacemaker series during the production of The Suicide Squad HBO Max series has become another destination for Warner Bros. DC properties, with both original films and TV shows being developed for the platform. While Titans and Doom Patrol came over from DC Universe after the service was shut down, Peacemaker became the first HBO Max DCEU show, serving as a spin-off from the Suicide Squad set after the events of the 2021 film. Peacemaker revolves around John Cena's Christopher Smith as he joins an Argus team to help stop He joins an Argus team to help stop Project Butterfly. Despite being based on one of DC's lesser-known characters, it didn't take long for critics and fans to fall in love with Peacemaker, as it became a massive hit for HBO Max. Prior to the Season 1 finale, the show was picked up for Season 2, with Gunn set to write and direct every single episode. However, Peacemaker is just the beginning, as Gunn and Warner Bros. Are looking to do multiple spin-offs from the Suicide Squad. So far, one offshoot series has been confirmed without specifying which character it will revolve around. I will take a wager with you, as I've already said, it's the Thinker. While more DCEU spin-offs will come to HBO Max, Gunn got the idea for the first one during the production of The Suicide Squad. In a new interview with Vulture, the busy filmmaker speaks about how Peacemaker was conceived as a solo series for Cena. According to Gunn, it was during a pivotal moment between Cena's Peacemaker and Ratcatcher 2, played by Daniela Melchior, in which the former almost killed the latter. Here's what Gunn says about the moment when he realised that Peacemaker should have his own series. Here's James Gunn. There's one really specific moment with me and John that I can trace the origin of this show back to. It's the moment in The Suicide Squad where Peacemaker is holding his gun on Ratcatcher 2 and he's about to kill her. I went into this tight close-up of his eyes on set. I'm always on the microphone talking over everything while we're shooting. So I'm talking to John on the God mic about what he's feeling, and I see his eyes switch. I see him go to this incredibly sad, vulnerable place. We realise the character is a guy who's doing something he doesn't want to do at all, but that he's going to do anyway, which is shoot a young girl. When I saw that moment in him, I knew John was not just a performer who was funny, which is why I hired him, but a guy who had this other layer. A big part of me wanting to do Peacemaker was to sculpt away all the other stuff, all the juggling and entertaining John does, and focus on that vulnerable sector. Well said, James Gunn. This sums up what James Gunn thinks about storytelling and narrative, and I think he's really done a great job with John Cena's Peacemaker. As Gunn pointed out, the Suicide Squad foreshadowed early that there was more than meets the eye when it came to Peacemaker. What could have been an empty character instead got an opportunity to be fleshed out into a three-dimensional superhero. Throughout Peacemaker Season 1, Gunn explored the bigger trauma in Christopher's life, such as the loss of his brother and the amount of abuse he had to take from his father during childhood. With the help of his supporting cast, the DC drama was able to add layers to Peacemaker that didn't get displayed heavily in the Suicide Squad. No, the Suicide Squad was his beginning, his introduction, so that was never going to happen. The right things were done with that character in that, but then to give him his own streaming show was a great idea, and it's really worked out for James Gunn and of course John Cena, and that's great. After a first successful season, it will be exciting to see where Peacemaker Season 2 takes Cena's character as his DCEU journey continues so far. HBO Max has not indicated when production is set to begin on Season 2, though it will likely be something after Gunn completes Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. You know what? I wouldn't put it past James to be doing that at the same time. He just doesn't want to stop right now, does he? Hopefully, as he finishes his MCU trilogy, Gunn will also begin work on the second, yet-to-be-revealed spin-off. With more Peacemaker adventures on their way, it will be intriguing to see what Gunn has planned for Cena's titular character and the other Suicide Squad players. As I said on yesterday's DCEU Daily, when I brought to you the rumour that I received that Discovery and David Zaslav want to bring Kevin Feige as the president of DC Films, you know, could you ever imagine years ago James Gunn being involved with DC live action? No. So it's very interesting where this is headed, but we're going to get more news in 4 weeks' time when Discovery and Warner Media merge to become Warner Discovery. Then things are going to get even more interesting. And finally today, we're talking about another Penguin. And this is Tim Burton's, aka Danny DeVito's Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, may be involved in the Batgirl movie. What's going on here? Batgirl set photo teases Tim Burton's Penguin could still be alive. A new photo from the Batgirl set in Glasgow suggests that the Burtonverse Penguin played by Danny DeVito in Batman Returns could be alive in the DCEU. How exciting is this? By Gabriel Featherstone of Screen Rant. A recent photo of a prop newspaper from the set of Batgirl could indicate that the Danny DeVito incarnation of the Penguin is alive and exists in the DCEU. Wow. Batgirl is currently filming in Glasgow and stars Leslie Grace as the titular crime fighter. It also features Michael Keaton reprising his role as Batman from Tim Burton's Batman. Its sequel Batman Returns and the soon-to-be-released Flash movie, other featured actors include J.K. Simmons reprising his role as Commissioner Gordon from both cuts of the DCEU Justice League movie, and Brendan Fraser as the villainous Firefly. What a great piece of casting that is, by the way. His second DC role after playing Robot Man in HBO Max's Doom Patrol. Yes, he's already in DC live action. This is the multiverse, everyone. Makes perfect sense. And Doom Patrol is fucking awesome. One of my favourite, live action DC incarnations. So good. The upcoming Flash movie, based on the popular Flashpoint comic, is set to introduce some major changes to the DCEU. One component of this multiverse-focused plot is the return of Keaton's Batman and the gothic Burtonverse he inhabits. However, the presence of Keaton's Batman in Batgirl, combined with the fact that Ben Affleck has said that he won't be appearing as the DCEU Batman again after his appearance in The Flash. He has kind of said this in a way when he said, The Flash was a great way to sign off. I think he's being very mischievous. Ezra Miller's reaction to that, Ezra found that hilarious. So nobody really knows what's going on here. Suggests that some kind of merging of universe will occur in The Flash, allowing Michael Keaton to become the DCEU's Batman, or at least one of them. Recently, in a now deleted tweet, Twitter user The Ian Shaw revealed a prop newspaper he found on King Street in Glasgow that seems to suggest that more than just Keaton's Batman will be transplanted into the DCEU. By the events of The Flash, the paper's headline reads, Lex Luthor jailed in Belle Reve Prison, a reference to both Superman's notorious arch-nemesis and the prison where Amanda Waller recruits supervillains for Task Force X in the Suicide Squad. At the bottom of the photograph, we can see a second headline, which is partially obscured by a fold in the newspaper. It seems to read, a comeback for Cobblepot. Wow. Which is likely to reference to Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The newspaper is an issue of the Gotham Globe, a fictional newspaper previously seen in Batman Returns. Wow. What's going on here? Are they merging all these Earths together? I think they could be doing that. The paper's logo is the same as the one seen in the Burtonverse. The image can be seen below via Twitter user Drisluna. I think that's how you say it. Yeah, media is not displayed. We can't see it anymore because it's been deleted or he's deleted it. But it's still there it still makes sense and something huge is happening. This image raises some questions about the future of Batman and Gotham in the DCEU. The presence of this Burtonverse newspaper in a DCEU film suggests that Keaton's Batman isn't the only aspect of that universe that will be incorporated into the DCEU. This could potentially open the door for other versions of characters from that continuity to return. DeVito's Penguin was killed towards the end of Batman Returns, but the fusion of universes might have created a new composite reality where the sewer-dwelling Umbrella enthusiasts survived. The comeback mention in the newspaper could even refer to the Penguin potentially returning from the dead, perhaps via one of Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus pits. Equally, the paper could be referring to a previously unseen DCEU version of the Penguin, that's true, although unlikely, rather than Danny DeVito's incarnation of the character. There are currently a number of Batman projects due to be released in the near future. Matt Reeves' The Batman, featuring Robert Pattinson's debut as the Caped Crusader and Colin Farrell as the Penguin, will be released next month, while The Flash, which features Keaton's highly anticipated Batman return, will arrive in cinemas in November. It will be very interesting to see how the events of that film and Batgirl will influence the DCEU going forward. Listen, we've seen Spider-Man No Way Home. We saw dead villains return to Tom Holland's Peter Parker's world. So anything's possible here. But I think one of my theories is that they're going to merge all the multiverses as one Earth. Now that would be interesting. So anything's possible here. I would be absolutely delighted to see Danny DeVito's Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot, return. Or as the author of the article said, it could just be the DCEU's version of Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. As I say, discount nothing in this industry. We are under very exciting times. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again, not tomorrow because I'm flying back to Cyprus, but on Friday's all new DCEU Daily. Until then, au revoir, goodbye, auf Wiedersehen. See you again soon, as long as I have a safe flight. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, see you again soon.